If you've ever sat down at a Brazilian table, there's a good chance something warm and golden was waiting right beside the main dish. Not the star of the plate, not the loudest flavor in the room, but the one thing that somehow makes everything taste more complete. That's farofa. Crispy, buttery, toasted cassava flour that catches the juices from a roast, balances the richness of beans, and adds that satisfying crunch that makes you go back for just one more spoon. Farofa isn't fancy. It's not meant to be. It's the kind of food that feels like home even if you've never been to Brazil. It shows up at Sunday lunches, at barbecues where the grill keeps going until sunset, and at everyday dinners when you want something simple to feel special. In Brazil, farofa is tradition. You can hear that soft crackle when the spoon hits the pan, that gentle rustle as the flour toasts, the little pauses at the table when everyone realizes the side dish is stealing the show again. Today I'm taking you straight into my kitchen to make a complete, classic, crispy farofa with just a few staples: bacon, onion, butter, and toasted cassava flour. Nothing complicated, nothing hard to find, just the method that turns basic ingredients into something deeply comforting. And the best part is how fast it comes together, as long as you respect one rule: don't rush the flour. Before we start, I'm curious, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Is it the food, the culture, the places, the music, the everyday life? Tell me in the comments, because I read them and I love bringing those curiosities into the next videos. And if you enjoy recipes that feel traditional but are easy to follow, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Alright, listen closely. We're about to drop bacon into a hot pan, and that first sizzle is where this story really begins. Farofa is one of those foods that doesn't ask for attention, but somehow ends up stealing the scene. It's the sound first, that soft crackle when the spoon drags through toasted flour, the tiny crunch that follows every bite. In Brazil, farofa isn't just a side. It's the little finishing touch that makes a plate feel complete, the way a warm kitchen feels complete when something good is happening on the stove. It shows up at family lunches, at weekend barbecues, at holiday tables, and even beside the simplest beans and rice on an ordinary Tuesday. It brings texture, comfort, and that unmistakable Brazilian sense of home. So come closer. Picture my kitchen right now, the pan already warming, the light catching on a small bowl of diced bacon, another with sliced onion, and a humble bag of cassava flour waiting its turn. The ingredients are simple on purpose. This is the kind of recipe built on technique, timing, and a little patience. I drop the bacon into the pan and let it do what it does best. At first it looks pale and quiet, but then the fat begins to melt, the edges start to bronze, and the aroma turns deep and savory. The sound changes too, from a gentle sizzle to that confident crackling that tells you flavor is being built. I stir slowly, watching for that moment when the pieces turn golden and crisp, not dry, not burnt, just right. If you've ever walked into a Brazilian house on a weekend and smelled something rich and comforting, this is part of it. And while we're here, tell me, have you ever tried farofa before, or is this your first time hearing about it? When the bacon is ready, I lower the heat just a touch and add butter, letting it melt into the pan like a glossy ribbon. Then in goes the onion. It hits the fat and immediately turns fragrant, sweetening as it softens, pulling up every browned bit from the bottom. This is where the kitchen starts to feel like a memory. If you like this kind of straightforward, traditional Brazilian cooking, subscribe and stay with me, because in the next step we bring in the cassava flour, and this is where most people rush, and where farofa can go from perfect to bitter in seconds. Now that we're in the kitchen, I want you to notice something before we even start. Farofa doesn't begin with the flour. It begins with aroma. It's that moment when the house starts smelling like something good is happening, and suddenly everyone wanders in pretending they're not hungry. I set a wide pan over medium heat and drop in the bacon, cut into small pieces so it renders evenly. At first it looks quiet, almost shy. Then the fat begins to melt, and you hear that steady sizzle that feels like a promise. I stir slowly, letting the pieces turn from pale to golden, then deeper, crisp at the edges. That's where flavor lives. If you like your bacon very crunchy, give it a little more time, but don't rush it with high heat. High heat gives you burnt outside and chewy inside, and farofa deserves better. When the bacon is ready, I pull it aside just for a second, not to cool it, but to keep it perfect. The pan stays right where it is, because that bacon fat is pure Brazilian seasoning. I add butter, and the moment it melts, in goes the onion, finely chopped. Listen closely, the sound changes. It goes from aggressive frying to a softer, gentler sauté. I stir until the onion turns translucent, and you'll see it start to pick up those browned bits from the bottom of the pan. That's the base. That's comfort. This is the part where I want to ask you something. In your home, what's the smell that instantly tells you a meal is about to be special? If this is bringing a memory, tap like so I know I'm not alone in that. Now I bring the bacon back in, mix it through the onions, and I'm watching the heat like a hawk, because the next step is where most people lose Farofa. Cassava flour burns quickly, and once it burns, the bitterness takes over everything. So I lower the heat just a touch, take a breath, and start adding the flour gradually, stirring patiently, coating every grain in that buttery, smoky flavor. And in a minute, you'll see it, from pale to warm, from soft to crisp, like sand turning into gold. Stay with me, because the difference between OK Farofa and perfect Farofa is only a few careful minutes. And if you want more Brazilian recipes like this, subscribe and come cook with me. Now I lower the heat just a touch, because Farofa rewards patience. The bacon is already where we want it, golden, crisp on the edges, and still a little chewy in the middle. I tilt the pan and you can see that rendered fat shining like liquid gold. That's flavor you can't fake. If there's too much, I'll spoon out a little, but I always leave enough to season every grain of flour. In goes the butter, and the sound changes immediately, softer, creamier. The kitchen fills with that warm, comforting smell that makes people wander in and ask, "What are you making?" Then the onion hits the pan and starts to sweat, turning translucent, picking up the bacon's smoky notes while the butter rounds everything out. I stir slowly, scraping the bottom, making sure nothing sticks. This is the base, the part that makes Farofa taste like a memory instead of just toasted flour. And now comes the moment that decides everything, the cassava flour. I sprinkle it in little by little, like a gentle rain, and I don't stop stirring. This is the number one mistake people make, they dump it all at once, turn the heat up, and then look away. 2 minutes later, it's bitter and dark, and the whole pan smells like burnt toast. Farofa doesn't forgive that. So I keep it moving, folding and pressing, letting the flour drink up the fat and butter. At first it looks pale and dry, almost shy. Then it starts to separate into tiny, sandy grains, each one coated, each one getting its turn on the hot surface. The color slowly shifts from raw ivory to a soft golden beige. I listen for that faint, crisp whisper when the spoon drags through it. That sound tells you it's getting crunchy without crossing the line. If you're watching right now and you've ever had Farofa go wrong, tell me, was it because it burned, or because it stayed soggy? And if this is your kind of simple, traditional cooking, take a second to like the video and subscribe, because we're about to fine-tune the texture and bring it to that can't-stop eating point in the next step. Now comes the moment that decides everything, the flour. I turn the heat down to low, because Farofa is patient food. You don't rush it, you guide it. The bacon is already golden, those little edges crisp, and the pan is carrying that smoky perfume. I slide in the butter and let it melt into the bacon drippings, then the onion goes back in. It sizzles softly, turning glossy, sweet, almost creamy. The kitchen smells like Sunday lunch before anyone even sits down. Here's the number one mistake people make: they crank the heat and try to toast the flour fast. That's how you get bitter, burned Farofa with dry, dusty texture. Instead, I sprinkle the cassava flour in gradually, like you're dusting the surface of the pan, and I keep stirring. Not violently, steady, calm, scraping the bottom so nothing sticks. You'll hear it change, from a damp, heavy hush to a lighter, sandy whisper as the grains separate and toast. Watch the color. At first it's pale, almost blonde, and you might think, is this done? Give it a little time. The flour will start picking up a warm, golden tone, and that's when the crunch shows up. Every few seconds, I pause just long enough to let the grains kiss the hot surface, then I move them again. That simple rhythm is what makes Farofa perfect. I taste with the tip of a spoon. It should be crisp but not hard, buttery but not greasy, with bacon popping through like little surprises. If it looks dry, a small extra knob of butter fixes it. If it feels too wet, another tablespoon of flour balances it out. Farofa is forgiving, and that's part of why it belongs on so many Brazilian tables. If this is making you hungry, tap like so I know you want more Brazilian basics done the right way. And tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil, food, culture, places, anything? In the next moment, we're going to finish this pan and I'll show you exactly how I like to serve it so it turns a simple meal into something that feels like home. And just like that, you've got it, a complete, crispy farofa that smells like Sunday lunch at someone's house, even if it's a regular Tuesday in your kitchen. Listen to that sound when you stir it, the tiny dry crunch of the toasted cassava flour, the soft sizzle of butter still clinging to the pan, the bacon bits popping up like little golden surprises. This is why farofa matters. It's not complicated food. It's comforting food. It's the kind of side dish that quietly turns just dinner into something that feels shared, warm, and unmistakably Brazilian. Before you serve, take a second to check the color. You want that gentle golden tone, like sand warmed by the sun, not dark brown. If the pan is still too hot, pull it off the heat for a moment and keep stirring. Farofa doesn't forgive distraction, but it rewards patience. The number one mistake is burning the flour, and you avoid it with one simple habit: low to medium heat and constant movement. You're not frying it aggressively, you're toasting it gradually, letting it drink in the bacon flavor and the sweet onion aroma. Now I like to spoon it into a bowl and bring it straight to the table. In Brazil, farofa isn't shy. It sits there ready to jump onto your plate beside rice and beans, next to a piece of grilled meat, over a little stewed chicken, even on top of a runny egg. The first bite is always the same feeling, texture waking everything up, a buttery crunch that makes the rest of the meal taste more alive. And then you understand, farofa is energy. It's that extra something that makes people go back for just a little more. If this recipe helped you, give the video a like, it tells me you want more simple Brazilian classics made the right way. And now I want to hear from you, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Is it the food, the traditions, the daily life, the music, the holidays? Drop it in the comments, because I read them and I build future videos from what you ask. And if you want to keep cooking with me, subscribe naturally so the next time you're craving that Brazilian table feeling, I'm already here, ready with the next recipe.